Hi everybody, super quick announcement before I start this reading. The Solace book is almost ready and I'm so excited and I'm so anxious to just get it out there. I have my ISBN. It's being edited for like the 200th time right now and I'm really excited. I think it's going to be next week, so I will definitely make an announcement when it's finally up on Amazon, and you might hear my dog snoring quite loudly in the background there, so if you do I apologize, but yeah, it's not me, it's her. Today I want to do something a little bit different. You know how some authors go around and they read the first chapter of their book at a bookstore or library or something? Well, obviously I can't do that because I'm releasing this online, but I want to share with you my personal entry in the book. So I'm going to talk about my personal corset journey. And now some of you who have been watching this channel since the very beginning will probably know a lot of this. I've already talked about my past in bits and pieces here and there, but this is probably going to be a bit of a longer entry for some of you. And some of you have been there like almost from the very beginning, like back when I was still on LiveJournal. But I also want to use this video to gather questions from you guys. So if you have any questions about the upcoming book, what it's going to be about, well, I've already been talking about that for ages now. What formats it's going to be in, how much it's going to cost, if there's going to be any other volumes in the future, anything like that. Leave me a comment down below because I will probably be having a Q&A video on Monday, and that will be the last video before the book is actually finally released. So very exciting about that. But let me just go ahead and read you my story, and I hope you really like it. I was first introduced to corsetry when I was 6 years old. My parents had rented the movie Gone with the Wind, which was set during the American Civil War in the early 1860s. The plot of the movie was terribly boring to me at the time, but I couldn't stop staring at the costumes. The ladies all looked like dolls come to life. Although I was painfully shy and never dressed fashionably throughout my childhood, I always got the hand-me-downs from my siblings and cousins. My love for the quote-unquote big skirt, small waist aesthetic stuck with me through my teens. I learned how to use a sewing machine at 14, and in my freshman year of high school, my mother and I worked on and off for nearly a month on my Halloween costume, a heavy black velvet Victorian morning gown. For a more authentic silhouette, we took the time to also search for old petticoats at a secondhand store, and we fashioned a pseudo-corset from a vintage long-line bra. After its alteration, it broadened my waist by barely 2 inches. I was proud of the heavy velvet gown and its underpinnings. It was the largest and most difficult costume my mother and I had yet attempted. My first Halloween in high school was not a day I look back on fondly. I distinctly recall having a handful of fine glitter tossed on me by a fairy, just a minor annoyance as it's difficult to brush out of velvet, having water spilled on me, which permanently stained my dress, and during the costume contest during lunch hour, being booed off stage, first by a small group of senior boys, which then quickly grew to a crowd of several hundred daring students. While my first instinct was to make myself as small as possible, or possibly run to the restroom, which would have made myself even more of a spectacle, my corset didn't allow me to hunch over. My face was hot and my hands shook as I carefully lifted my skirts to step off stage and weave through the still sneering audience. I once again found my seat and planted myself there. I was determined to watch the remainder of the Halloween contest with my shoulders squared and my posture tall. Although I felt a panic attack threatened to bubble up to the surface, it never came. As I sat in class during the following period, I remember feeling oddly, remarkably zen-like about what had just happened. Knowing my own nature as a sensitive young teen, the scenario over lunch period would normally have been devastatingly embarrassing and should have induced bouts of anxiety and crying for days. But it didn't come. That was my first experience with the armor-like charm of corsetry. For those curious, I think some guy in junior year with a commercially made tampon costume won that contest. My interest in cosplay and historical dress grew over the years and drove my fascination with corsets even further. Corsets, although compact, were in some ways even more difficult to sew than poofy skirts, and I took it as a personal challenge to master their construction. I created my first genuine corset from a Simplicity 9769 pattern at age 18, and I wore it occasionally for fun, but it wasn't until I went to university that I started wearing corsets on a regular basis due to back pain from my work. For a few years, I had worked as a student painter in the summers, which involved hauling 4 gallon-sized cans of paint at a time, carrying around 30-foot ladders by myself, etc. As an overachiever, I prided myself on being one of the most professional painters on the crew, and to me, professional meant not asking for help while doing heavy lifting. Although I adored being able to move my body and work outdoors in the warm, sunny weather, these tasks took a toll on my body, and I begged for back massages from anyone who would listen. I consider myself very fortunate that the pain was only muscular and I didn't suffer any long-term injury to my spine. My backaches continued when I went back to university in the fall. I was required to carry around my heavy backpack all over campus and to be at the bench or in front of a microscope all day in my laboratory studies. I dug out my old Simplicity corset and I wore it when I returned home most evenings. I appreciated the back support and the posture control it gave me, even when laced loosely, at most an inch or two of waist reduction. By the time I had made dinner and removed my corset, my muscles felt relaxed and refreshed. I continued this for several months, until the bedsheeting I had used for the corset's fabric tore beyond repair. By that point, I knew I wanted to make another corset, also for cosplay purposes, and although I didn't experience any negative symptoms, I did admit to being concerned about the possible consequences on my health. It was at this point that I began to research corsets more heavily, and I discovered the corset makers community on LiveJournal, which led me down a rabbit hole of information where I found, most notably, Romanticy Exquisite Corsetry and the Long Island Staylace Association, or LISA. I also began researching any scientific publication I could find on the physiological effects of corseting. I decided that in order to make a perfect corset for myself, I had to know what a real corset, not made from a bedsheet, was like. And online research just wasn't cutting it. I had to study a real corset in my hands. There were no local shops that carried genuine corsets, so I went to eBay to purchase my first off-the-rack corset. For weeks, I spent a few hours every evening comparing the details and stats and prices and agonizing over which brand and style to choose. There was very little information in product listings, and very few corset reviews at the time. This would be my most expensive purchase to date, apart from my rent and tuition, and my finger hovered over the mouse in trepidation before I finally clicked the Buy Now button. The corset I chose was an emerald brocade underbust from Timeless Trends. When I finally received it, I was blown away by the quality. Although I had made corsets before, they were nothing like this. The weight of it, the smoothness of it, the quality of the stitching, the support it provided. As much as I had read corset making books, commercial patterns, and tutorials from corsetiers online, and as much as I tried to guess at the correct construction on my own, there was nothing quite like holding a real corset in my hands. I suddenly had a new appreciation for hands-on learning. Everything I had previously read about suddenly clicked in a new way. Putting on this corset and creating curves that hadn't existed before was also a revelation. From the ages of 13 to 20, my weight hadn't budged no matter what I ate or how active I was, or wasn't. I was a late bloomer, still growing in height in my early 20s. Then, a second puberty seemed to hit at 21, and with a combination of stress, hormones, and a sometimes unsteady income that directly affected the quality of my groceries, my weight then slid around by as much as 30 pounds or 14 kilograms over several years. I didn't necessarily dislike my figure at any particular weight, but no matter how much I gained or lost, my waist and hips were never clearly defined. I was interested in obtaining an hourglass figure, or in the very least, interested in getting a glimpse of what I might have looked like with one. As I pulled my green corset around me and a gentle ski slope appeared from my waist to my hips for the first time, I also thought about its cosplay and costuming possibilities, and I may have jumped with glee. I was still interested in the corset as back support, so after clearing my corset wearing with my supervisor, I started wearing it under my lab coat to work. I noticed that my shoulders didn't round forward when I worked, and that my weight was evenly distributed between my feet. Even when I had a particularly long day in the lab, my back and my feet didn't hurt when I left for home. And if I kept the corset on in the evening, I was better able to listen to my body's natural cues, and I was less tempted to give in to emotional eating. I also began to experience a rise in self-assurance. The straight posture encouraged by my corset created an air of confidence, and others started to take notice that my body language had changed, even when my corseted silhouette was concealed under clothing. Its gentle compression gave me constant biofeedback with every breath, and its armor helped me take setbacks in stride. With its portable, discreet, deep pressure therapy device, my anxiety lessened, and I found myself better able to accept constructive criticism at work and school without feeling personally slighted. With my family and my boyfriend living many hours away, I didn't get enough hugs in my day, and my corset provided quiet solace, allowing me to remain productive during periods of stress. In time, my posture improved and my body language became more powerful. Public speaking became easier for me, and I excelled in my side job as a teaching assistant. In fact, I started looking forward to presentations. The students began to look up to me, and my perception of myself began to improve as well. The year that I started wearing my corset to work under my clothes, many of my kids wrote on their teacher evaluation forms things like, "Lucy is the best TA. Lucy's lessons were the easiest to understand. Lucy was always patient and helpful." Something inside me Something inside me started to glow. I loved teaching more than any other job I had had up till then, and I felt that teaching was going to be an important part of my life. Over several months, my waist shrank and my first corset closed. I needed a new corset, and I decided that I would go back to making my own corsets, as it would be cheaper and would give me another creative outlet. We all know how well that worked out. In my mind, there had to be a single, perfect, correct way to make a corset. How could there possibly be so many different construction techniques, so many different ways to stitch a seam, so many different silhouettes and patterns in existence? In the interest of learning which corset is the best corset, I started purchasing more off the rack and custom corsets online. And over the months and years, that collection grew. I pondered about how to document my research so I could refer back to it when I needed and share it with others in an easy way. Writing out descriptions was all right. Photos were better, but I wanted my documentation to be exceedingly detailed. What about video? At the time, there were very few people making YouTube videos about corsets, Phoenix, or Snafayupufikar, being the most notable, due to her willingness to show her face on camera and talk frankly about the reality of daily corset wear. She had much charisma and spoke with much candor. I uploaded a short video of my own in 2010, thanking her for convincing me that perhaps my fascination with corsetry was not so weird and taboo after all. That video went semi-viral within days. Suddenly, I found myself with a platform to talk about something I loved, to enlighten others, and to share what I learned each step of the way. Although my channel later took on more of an educational tone, as opposed to being the original intended personal video diary, it is still very much an implicit chronicle of my own growth. Looking back through my video archives, I can see how my studies and the international corset community have shaped me in more ways than one over the years. I hope to continue to share my acquisition of knowledge and the refinement of my philosophies surrounding corsetry for many years to come. So that is my personal corset journey, and that is the first story in my upcoming book, Solaced, 101 Uplifting Narratives About Corsets, Well-Being, and Hope. That's actually in the introduction, and so that sort of kicks off the book. And then I go into the inspiration for Solaced, including the passing of my friend Jody Hewitt, or Phoenix Jody Ray, as she was known on YouTube, and how that sort of inspired me to start doing the corset giveaways once a year, custom corsets for people who need a corset for a special medical purpose. And from there, I built the corset benefits list on my website, and it sort of grew into this book. So it's been a baby that's sort of been gestating for something like 4 years. And this book isn't the end of what I'm now calling the Solace Project. And I have very solid goals that I want to complete in the next few years. And I talk about that in another section of the introduction called The Mission of the Ongoing Solace Project. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about it now because this video is super long, but it goes into educating more corset makers about orthopedic technology and possibly getting more medical insurance companies on board to help cover, at least partially, the cost of some medical and therapeutic corsets. So yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about in this video. If you have any questions about the upcoming book or the project or corset benefits, history, or anything, leave me a comment down below. I will answer those questions on Monday. Thank you so much, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.